This week, I've got Smurfs, which is the latest film featuring the characters based on the works of Peyo, who is the Belgian artist who originated the Smurfs. And I am going to start off by saying, I don't know who the Smurfs are for. Like, I truly don't understand. I know there must be a fan base out there because we keep making Smurfs movies or Smurfs shows, but I think mostly movies of late. I am not a Smurfs person. I don't particularly have any affinity for them. No disrespect, I guess, to them in general as a concept. Although I was doing a deep dive, and there is some questionable stuff in the Smurfs history, but I digress. So I am not the target audience for this film. Again, I acknowledge that there have to be Smurfs fans out there because we keep doing these movies. This time around, there's this whole super complicated lore that I am not even going to get into because it makes no sense, but the end result is that John Goodman as Papa Smurf gets kidnapped, and the rest of the Smurfs have to go save him. The centerpiece of this film is Rihanna as Smurfette. And there is no questioning that Rihanna is a talented person, but that does not make her a great voice actress, and she just does not fit the vibe of this film, and yet she is a producer on this film. Or I don't know if the film managed to not fit her vibe since she is a producer on it, but it was just so lifeless and unenergetic, and not that I need Smurfette to be energetic, but there was something about the whole thing that was just very dull, and the whole film is very dull and also convoluted and not particularly entertaining. I went to a screening that there were no children at, and I think that may have honestly had a huge impact on it. I spoke to some colleagues who did go to a screening that had kids there, and they said the kids were laughing, so I'm like, okay, maybe that is who this is for, a lowest bar, 4-year-old. But even then, I wouldn't recommend this to my friends who have little kids. It's just not that interesting, and I think they're gonna get bored and squirmy. Like I said, Rihanna is Smurfette. She also has new music in this, and it's not that exciting. And I don't, a lot of the film is centered around musical sequences in order to amp up the Rihanna factor of it. And I'm just like, this is just taking away from the already lackluster plot. It has a stacked voice cast. It's got Kurt Russell, Nick Offerman, James Corden, who, whatever, Dan Levy, Amy Sedaris, Natasha Lyonne, Sandra Oh, Jimmy Kimmel, Octavia Spencer, Nick Kroll, Hannah Waddingham, Alex Winter, Maya Erskine, Billy Lord, Shola Maraduena, and Marshmallow. And if you are going to see this film because you are fans of any of these people, I gotta caution that most of them have a very limited presence in this film. I think Sandra Oh maybe has 10 lines, if that. And I'm like, good for you, Sandra Oh. Do half a day in the recording booth and get whatever, ridiculous amount of money you got for this film. But unfortunately, the usage of these stars is not a valid reason to go see this film because they are barely in it and unrecognizable. And so I'm like, maybe we should have cast people who have more experience. Nobody's bad, except for, I'm so sorry to say, Rihanna is not a great voice actress. But I'm like, perhaps if we had not focused so much on trying to bring in star power and instead had focused on, one, fixing the plot and making it entertaining, and two, perhaps bringing in people who are voice actors and not worrying so much about jamming so many people into the cast in order to appeal to I don't even know who, that probably would have been a better choice. So, like I said, the plot is bizarre and convoluted, and I was trying to find out whether or not some of it is actually canonical lore in the world of Smurfs. I gave up because I didn't care. The animation is fine. It's fine. They do some interesting things with 2D versus 3D looks. It's still 3D, and then there's some Smurfs in the real world things, which I always bump up against a little bit because Smurfs are so small, and having them be in real world settings, it sometimes just highlights the cheats that you have to do, when they're running in a real world. I'm like, they wouldn't move that fast. This just looks a little bit off. That's getting more technical than perhaps this film deserves to dive into. Should you go see Smurfs? Nah, I don't think so. If you are a hardcore Smurfs fan, maybe, I guess. I don't know how many folks are out there that still fall into that category. If you have little kids and are really desperate for something to do this weekend and want air conditioning, perhaps you're not going to have a great time. My guess is they will have a better time than you will, but that's an at your own risk scenario. I think the other thing is this film does try to kind of play into the joke of usage of Smurf to be a broad statement and maybe, censor over things. And even that isn't funny. And I'm like, this is the lowest bar of humor that you could utilize, and you couldn't even get that right. So I cannot recommend this film in good conscience. Little kids perhaps will find something to entertain themselves with, but it's probably not worth the pain on your side if you're the adult. And I always go into movies trying to find the best in them and trying to have a good time because this is time from my life I don't get back. And I really, truly wish there was something in Smurfs I could glom onto and find redemption in, but it's a really tough watch. And I know people work hard on these films. Nobody sets out to make a bad movie, but sometimes trying to make things work, like the Rihanna part of this, that just aren't meant to work, gets in the way. I'm only going to give this a 1.8 out of 5.